Okay, we're going to go ahead and get restarted here. So if you can take your seats, please. I do apologize to all of you for not holding up my end of the bargain here to keep us on track, but that would have, I knew we weren't going to stay on track. I just was being optimistic. And so I am sorry that we are running so far over. We did discuss how many things were on this agenda and had realized that this might be the case, but we only have 2 more issues to discuss tonight. And we're going to move to item number 8 on the agenda, which is to review state compliance with addendum 28, summer flounder recreational measures. So Kirby's going to give us a presentation, and there might be action that will come after Kirby's presentation. So Kirby, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's a pretty short presentation. First is background. The board approved addendum 28 in February 2017. The addendum specified that states needed to notify the commission of the measures they were going to implement by March 1st. The board met via conference call on March 30th to review proposals from Massachusetts and Rhode Island for alternative measures for 2017 that differed from those that were spelled out in the addendum 28. Those proposals were not approved. Moving forward, nearly all the states have both indicated their 2017 measures for summer flounder recreational fishery in 2017 and implemented them. New Jersey has not implemented measures. The next slide here shows what the approved measures were for 2017 as per the option 5 that the board selected. And then next we have the implemented measures for 2017 so far. The days in terms of the start and end dates differ a little bit from previous years, but as you can note here, New Jersey has not implemented those measures yet. So for the board's consideration today, taking action for states/regions that have not implemented the provisions of addendum 28, and I'll take any questions now. Thank you.
Any questions for Kirby regarding his presentation? David Pierce.
Yeah, just make sure I've got this, Kirby. So what states have not yet implemented their rules for 2017?
New Jersey.
New York has?
Excuse me. Yes, as of this afternoon, New York has implemented those measures. They were signed by the governor, and I was sent notification of that.
Okay, I'm a bit, that's still confused. I thought New York was appealing on the fluke measures. What has happened relative to New York and fluke?
I'm not aware of an appeal by New York on fluke. There's an appeal by New Jersey on the actions. Well, there's an appeal by New Jersey.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
So but New York, unless you guys know something I don't, Jim, there has been no appeal.
It's late. I'm probably mixing up sea bass and fluke, so all right. Thank you.
So let me just, why don't I just clarify what we're asked to do here. I've been made aware of an alternative approach that New Jersey would like to discuss with the board this evening. However, I feel that the question that the board is being asked right now to decide upon is whether or not we want to make a recommendation to the policy board to find any state that has not implemented fluke measures as a result of the decisions that were made on addendum 28, if we want to make a recommendation to the policy board to find them out of compliance. So that's the question before the board. New Jersey is the only state that has not put forth those measures that were part of the option that were voted on as part of addendum 28. So that's the question. Do we want to make a motion? Does the board want to take action to recommend to the policy board New Jersey being found out of compliance? So I say that meaning that I view this issue and the recommendation to the policy board as a black and white issue. They're in compliance or they're out of compliance. That's my interpretation of the idea behind the compliance measure. Now, I mentioned that New Jersey would like to present an alternative approach after this action's taken on whether or not they're compliant or not. And so I would offer them that opportunity to make that appeal, not necessarily, that's a wrong choice of words, to propose what they're considering, but let's dispense with the issue over compliance now, and then we can turn to that. David.
Well, with that said and with that clarification, then I would move to recommend to the policy board that New Jersey be ruled out of compliance with.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, the out of compliance motions have a lot of very specific prescribed parts. So in anticipation that this may come up at this meeting, staff went ahead and pulled together a motion that, you know, Dr. Pierce, if you know, read through it. If that's what you want, then you know, we can go with that. If you want to make changes to it, that's fine. But there are a number of sort of prescribed pieces that need to be in a non-compliance motion.
With that said, then I'll make the motion, which is the first one on the top, right? That's the one that you penned.
No, it's the whole thing.
The whole thing.
They wrote it for you. It's
Start reading, Dr. Pierce.
Wow, okay. Standard stuff. Okay, the intent is obvious. Do I need to read that? I guess I do, don't I? I'll read it. If need be, Mr. Chairman.
I can read it or you can read it.
I'll read it. I can see that far. All right, I would move that the Summer Flounder, Scup, and Black Sea Bass Board recommends to the ISFMP Policy Board that the state of New Jersey be found out of compliance for not fully and effectively implementing and enforcing Addendum 28 to the Summer Flounder, Scup, and Black Sea Bass Fishery Management Plan if the state does not implement the following measures by May 21, 2017. Shore mode for Island Beach State Park only, 17-inch minimum size limit, 2 fish possession limit, and 128-day open season. Delaware Bay only, west of the Coloregs line, 17-inch minimum size limit, 3 fish possession limit, and 128-day open season. All other marine waters east of the Coloregs line, 19-inch minimum size limit, 3 fish possession limit, and 128-day open season. The implementation of these regulations is necessary to achieve the conservation goals and objectives, and there are shadows on the screen. Okay, I can't see that from. I'm reading over here. I can read it. And objectives of the FMP to end overfishing of the summer flounder stock. In order to come back into compliance, the state of New Jersey must implement all of the measures listed above as contained in Addendum 28 to the summer flounder FMP. So that is my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, David, for reading that into the record. Do I have a second on this motion? Bob Ballou seconds the motion. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion? Tom?
Hello. Meeting adjourned. Somebody use this one.
Don't start pulling all that. I think it's just maybe where Matt's got the short.
I think it's David's. David, Dr. Pierce, push the plug in the back of yours.
Dan, take the plug in the back of David's and...
It's on now.
Hey, thank you. We're back on to infinity and beyond. You bet.
Okay, so Tom, before I go to you, I think we've identified a typo or an error in this motion. I'm not going to ask you, David, to reread it, but the Delaware Bay only west of the Coloregs line should have been 18 inches. That was what was part of the option 5 as it was described. So with that, Tom, do you have any comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I realize there's a motion on the floor. So if this happens, then we'll get a chance to at least possibly discuss our alternative measures. And I'm not quite sure what happens after that, if there's another motion that could be contingent on these other measures. Maybe you can follow up with that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And so I realize that there might be another motion regarding the alternative measures that you may suggest. This is not determining noncompliance. This is recommending to the ISFMP Policy Board whether or not this board would recommend to the Policy Board a noncompliance finding. So tomorrow, depending on what actions are taken after this action is taken, I want to get this off the table so that we can address your alternative proposal. You know, as Kirby mentioned, there were previous alternative proposals that were reviewed and the board denied. So there will be a follow-up action to this action, and the way I'm seeing it take place, whether or not the board would want to agree to allow New Jersey and or now the previous proposals from Massachusetts and Rhode Island to be put forth. And so all of this action tonight will go to the Policy Board, and their Policy Board, I guess, will be hearing the appeal as well as making a final determination on whether or not to recommend noncompliance. So those actions will be taken up at a different time, if that makes sense. Okay. Bob?
I think one important thing to remember in this motion is that the Summer Flounder Board is not recommending, or is recommending that the Policy Board and potentially the full commission find New Jersey out of compliance if they haven't done something by May 21st. So this isn't an immediate non-compliance finding. It's a if by date certain something hasn't happened in New Jersey, then you know, letters could be sent off to the Secretaries of Commerce and Interior. So it's not, this is not an immediate non-compliance finding. And that window, I think, provides some of the opportunity that the chair is speaking of to consider these alternative options that New Jersey appears to be potentially bringing forward.
Thanks, Bob. Adam?
So this motion is very specific regarding the number of days, size, and possession limits. When we had a motion about black sea bass earlier, about very similar measures, and we allowed for conservation equivalency, is the message here that it needs to be exactly these measures pending other discussion, or are we saying or something equivalent to those measures by May 21st?
Bob?
I think, Adam, the wording's in there now because those are the suite of regs that the board has approved so far. If a new set comes forward, I think that at the Policy Board level, those can and should be reconsidered at that time to maybe changing the wording of this motion or incorporate the notion of conservation equivalency.
Thanks, Bob. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, does anyone need to caucus on this? Raise your hand if you need to caucus. All right, seeing no hands, do I need to reread this to the record? All right. Since it was only a few minutes ago, I'm going to let Adam, or I'll let David, this motion. You're going to give me a pass on this one to reread it. So we have a motion. Essentially what this motion does is recommends to the Policy Board the finding of noncompliance based on New Jersey's implementation of Option 5 regulations, which include what's listed here. As Adam mentioned, when this comes up in front of the Policy Board tomorrow, depending on what further action this board may consider tonight, those modifications could be made at the Policy Board level, depending on whether or not the alternative approach that New Jersey is preparing right now to present is something that this board would agree upon. So all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hand. It's 9 in favor. All those opposed, same sign. That's 1 opposed. Null votes. Seeing none. Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay. This motion carries and will be made tomorrow to the Policy Board. Tom, back to you on the alternative approach.
Yes, thank you. I did prepare those measures. I did provide those measures to Tony. Back in February, we made a plea for to remain at 2016 or to postpone the motion. We didn't receive support. Made the plea to have time to figure out something that would work for our fishermen. So since then, we filed an appeal on that February 2nd decision to the commission. I believe it's on the agenda for tomorrow at the policy board. And we've also been working with NOAA. Our commissioner has been working with NOAA. Our technical committee member has been working on basically a conservationally equivalent proposal. I believe at least one other person from the technical committee has seen it, but not everybody on the TC. The new option is based on both the harvest and the discards, the discards mortality. We find it more conservative than having a 19-inch size limit, 3-fish bag, and a 128-day season. This, again, we were in consultation with NOAA Fisheries, and I believe the TC member from New York, I believe NOAA Fisheries supports this methodology. So without further ado, we're proposing to have an 18-inch minimum size limit, a 3-fish bag limit, and a season of 104 days. And that season would be May 25th to September 5th. Those dates are important because they get both of the major holidays in, being Memorial Weekend, the whole weekend, and the Labor Day weekend. As far as the methodology, in comparison, these measures, they equate using, as far as dead discards, so at 19 inches, we'll have all these extra dead discards, regulatory discards, the mortality from these discards. And we eliminate them by staying at 18 inches. We eliminate the majority of them. So compared to option 5 going to 19 inches, the total mortality would be 1,195,155 fish, as opposed to what our 18-inch size limit would do, would be 1,028,936 fish. Depending on what percent of mortality rate you use for the discarded fish. If you use a 10% discard mortality rate, which is what is accepted, it would be a 23% reduction from our 2016 regs. We're proposing to have a outreach and education blitz as far as angler behavior and fish handling and releasing. So we would reduce that discard mortality by at least 2%. So that would bring us up to a 30% reduction from our 2016 regulations. Part of our education and outreach blitz, we promote the NOAA's Fish Smart and Take Me Fishing apps through our social media. We create videos for specific to fluke handling that people can access on their smartphones. Urge the for-hire fleet to to show that video to their customers on board. Again, through social media and radio advertisements, local publications. We'd have posters and brochures to distribute, especially through our APIS outreach. All the businesses, the bait and tackle shops, and also promote and looking into, promoting the gear, especially larger size hooks. I believe it was Carl Benson and I can't remember the researcher's name, gave gave the Mid-Atlantic Council a presentation on the hook sizes. That was J hook sizes, and basically it showed that the larger hook size you use reduced basically, it was selective to the size of the fish you would harvest, and it eliminated those smaller size fish that you would catch. I did neglect to include in those measures that we would still maintain a shore-based fishery, shore mode only fishery for Island Beach State Park with a 2-fish bag and a 16-inch size limit, and a 17-inch size limit in the Delaware Bay with a 3-fish bag limit, and also both would have that 104-day season. The added benefit to this is it maintains for the first time and who knows when, similar size limits in the same water body. And I'll pause there and take questions.
Okay, does anybody have any direct questions for Tom on the proposal? No, not at this time. So what I'd like to do is take any direct questions. I noticed Jay's back up here, so if there's any technical questions that we might be able to answer, any questions directly to Tom. But at some point, I'm going to look to New Jersey to making a motion that we can debate and decide upon, take final action on that decision. So I saw a couple hands. Who has a comment? Bob?
Tom, I have a quick clarification question. So the 18-inch, 3-fish, 104 days, the holiday weekends included, is that for your ocean fishery? And maybe you missed it, but what would happen with the Delaware Bay fishery and the one shore-based fishery?
Yes, I covered that at the end. I didn't include it with the original measures. So for Island Beach State Park, which was our shore mode only site, that would be a 16-inch size minimum size limit and a 2-fish bag limit, and the same season as the rest of the state. And for Delaware Bay, it would be a 17-inch size limit, 3-fish possession limit, and the same 104-day season, the same dates.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, let's do questions, and then Tom, I'll turn to you in a few minutes here for make a motion. Jim?
Just another point of clarification. As Tom had mentioned that this was approved by the New York TC member. My understanding was actually they provided some information for a spreadsheet, but it wasn't anything. The entire thing was not approved by him. It was just okay. Just wanted to clarify that. And I'll have, after we get a motion up, we'll have further comments. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. John Clark?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom, can you elaborate? You said you vetted this with Garfo already. Who is somebody from Garfo here to respond to that this has already been cleared by them?
I'll turn to Garfo, but yes, we were in consultation with them and their staff.
So, I don't know, do you guys have anything to comment on?
We've been in touch with New Jersey on this. It hasn't been fully analyzed, so I don't think it's something we can say we've approved. I don't know whether that was what Tom was saying, but we've certainly been in discussions with them, yeah.
Bob Lou?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom, my question for you is, has this been submitted as a conservation equivalency proposal in accordance with the Commission's conservation equivalency guidelines and policy, and along with that reviewed by the technical committee, and if not, why not?
Well, no, it hasn't been officially submitted, and it would need to have gone through the TC. Why not? Well, we were going through the whole appeal process, and in the meantime, our department staff, our commissioner staff, working behind the scenes with the federal office as well. So we were, as our commissioner had said back in February, he was going to exhaust all avenues, and this was one of them.
David Pierce?
Bob has covered it.
Okay. Roy Miller?
Mr. Chairman, help us out procedurally, ignoring the details of the proposal for the moment. Procedurally, my perception is we're unable to take action on this proposal at this point in time since it hasn't been vetted by the technical committee. Apparently, it hasn't been fully vetted by our federal partners either. So where are we? What's a reasonable path forward to entertain this proposal so that it can be fully vetted and approved at perhaps some point in the future, or at least fully evaluated?
I don't have a great answer for you, Roy, but why don't I try to spend a minute to just frame out where we have been and what may be in front of us as a result of action here. So, if you think back to February, the board made a determination to go with the option 5. And option 5 came with a justification that was submitted by ASMFC to GARFO regarding those actions as they would be taken by all of the states based on the decision that was made by the board. That justification had a lot of details to it. And so in between the February meeting and this meeting, Massachusetts and Rhode Island submitted conservation equivalency proposals for the board's consideration. And those conservation equivalency proposals were different than what the regulations would have been if Massachusetts and Rhode Island would have followed the recommendation of the board for option 5. And the board, at the time of consideration on those conservation equivalency proposals, which were vetted through the technical committee, denied those requests based on, at the time, what the board perceived to be a justification that was written based on a unified approach along the coast of increased minimum size limits, reduced bag limits, and season structure. We are now being approached by New Jersey with an alternative look, another conservation equivalency proposal, but we have the technical committee review and the other parts that would have been considered have not happened. So what faces the board right now, this is how I see it. We need to decide if we want to continue down the path of reviewing New Jersey's conservation equivalency proposal, allowing for time for review and further board action at a later date, whether it's a webinar or we're going to have to do something very soon to make that happen. And in that consideration of New Jersey's conservation equivalency proposal, the board may want to reconsider the actions it took on the Massachusetts and Rhode Island proposals. So those are the different pieces of the puzzle that are kind of linking themselves together right now. And I hope that that's clear enough. John, if you have something else to offer.
Yeah, Mike, I think you've, Mr. Chair, summarized this, and I want to say something in addition to my earlier remarks, because similar to some discussions we've had earlier in the day, you know, all of us around the table find ourselves in a difficult situation where, you know, there isn't a pure or right answer. There's just a situation in front of us. It's May 10th, and we are where we are, and so the Fisheries Service has been working with New Jersey, and I've certainly had a lot of conversations with a lot of you about, you know, what is the best outcome. And when I looked at option 5, it seemed to me that one of the things, it had many advantages, but one of the disadvantages it had was that it required people to catch 19-inch fish in southern New Jersey, which is a trick. And as I said to a number of people, I think asking people to do things that they can't do is not a wise policy. And asking people to catch 19-inch fish in southern New Jersey is a pretty hard thing to do. And so I understand what led to frustration. And so New Jersey has tried to come up with an equivalent way to achieve conservation. Now, I wish they had done that earlier. Would have been a hell of a lot easier. But we are where we are. And so Tom has laid out 3 fish, 104 days. That's a cut of 24 days. And we don't have time to understand what that gets us. So it's hard to say, yes, you know, the service can approve it, or any of us can look at it, because it is late in the day and people are opening their seasons. But it is significant. And all of us have to look at it against the other real options that are out there staring us in the face. And so all of us are used to dealing with real choices. That's why I say this isn't about, like some other decisions we've made today, this isn't about, you know, pure right and wrong kind of things. This is about the real choices that are in front of us and making the best of it. And so, fortunately, we've had some practice today.
Thanks, John, and I'll clarify based on my discussion with Bob. So we're looking at, we have 3 different paths that we can take here. We can make the policy decision and approve this tonight, if that's the board's wishes, without any further review by the technical committee. We can approve this option tonight pending a technical committee review. Or the third one was we go through the process of, so the second option would require a technical committee review, and only if the technical committee were to say that this conservation equivalency is equal to that for which option 5 was, it would be approved. Or the board could ask the technical committee to review it and then reconvene to discuss and determine at a later date. But again, it's May 10th, so that later date might be next week. This would have to happen very quickly. So with all of that said and clarified, we'll take another comment or two, and then Tom, I want to turn to you for a motion. Jim?
Well, maybe one other option. You know, we're trying to cram this thing down for a 21st start, 21st of May. And, you know, we, not to get into the details of this, but I mean, this is procedurally a real difficulty because we have a process and we're way past that. One other option would be to implement the regulations in option 5, and then they'll have, the fishery will open and they won't be out of compliance, and then they can essentially put in that proposal, and that gives us a little bit more time because you're talking about, I mean, I prefer the last option, that we would essentially have the TC review it. We'd have to set up a board meeting by conference call or something to vote on or whatever, and again, with schedules, whatever, in a week or two, that's not going to happen. So that last option I'm suggesting is maybe, essentially let them file their regulations now as in option 5, and then we can consider this proposal, and I guess probably Rhode Island and Massachusetts if they wanted to, raise theirs again, and that gives us some time to look at those without delaying the opening of the fishery.
All right, thanks for that suggestion, Jim. Eric Reed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make this as short and as clear as possible. Rhode Island will not be able to have our proposal re-examined because we proposed a later start date, but because we are in compliance, we cannot do what we wanted to do, which was more conservative than we needed to do to meet the requirements of option 5, which, by the way, didn't meet the requirements of meeting the target anyway. So, to use Dewey's word, I got hacked. But let's be clear. Rhode Island will not have the ability to revisit their proposal because we are in compliance.
Thank you, Eric. David Bush.
Yes, just a quick question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I heard you correctly, the estimated reduction would be at 23%?
We're proposing I'll use the term ad hoc methodology. So right now, the discard mortality rate for summer flounder, I believe, it's used at 10%. We're going to have an education blitz to our anglers, and we're going to target to reduce that mortality rate and estimate it to be 8%. So then it would be a 30% reduction from our 2016 regulations. Yes.
So the total would be 30?
Yes.
Thank you.
Rob O'Reilly.
I think David asked the question I was interested in from before, but also the 23% reduction versus the 30% reduction, are they on the same footing? In other words, is that done with the same type of analysis to get that difference? I realize that the information that's going to go to the public and everything else, I think you said adds about 2% or something like that. I wasn't sure, but I was interested whether they were both done on the same footing. And then I did want to say, for those who were, Rhode Island and Massachusetts, who were on our conference call, that, there was a real impetus for a lot of us to sort of hold the line on option 5. And, that was done, and the line's gotten a little bit blurred, I think. So, with a little bit of situation that we had then compared to now, I think we need to probably maybe take a little more time next time around. But this was a new way of looking at it. It's still, option 5 is still supported by many of the regions and the states in the region, and I think that's important, but perhaps, time got us, and, now I kind of wish that Rhode Island would be able to do something.
Okay, Tom, so at this time, I'd like to get a formal motion on the table, and I know that you've provided staff with what we see on the board, but I'm also going to look to you to determine the path forward that we would take, how the board would consider those 3 alternative paths, and the 4th one that Jim offered.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to propose the following measures for New Jersey's 2017 summer flounder recreational fishery based on conservation equivalency. The shore mode for Island Beach State Park only, a 16-inch minimum size limit, 2 fish possession limit, and 104 days open season, May 25th to September 5th. Delaware Bay only, west of the Coal Regs line, 17-inch minimum size limit, 3 fish possession limit, and 104-day open season, May 25th to September 5th. All other marine waters, I don't believe I need the east of Colreg's line, so I'll delete that. 18-inch minimum size limit, 3 fish possession limit, 104-day open season, May 25th to September 5th. And I would look for the board to approve these measures at this venue.
To clarify, you're asking for the approval this evening without technical review and further consideration by the board. I just want to be clear on that.
I would love a TC review, and I'm willing to put that in. So I'd say board approval tonight, pending timely TC approval. And I don't know if I can put a date in there or not, and if I could, I would have actually put a due date in there, probably next week, May, you know.
All right, let us get clear on this, Tom, and then I'll look for a second. My phone's dead, so I can't look at the calendar.
My paper calendar never runs out of batteries.
So
It's the 17th is a week from today.
the 17th is a week from today. So Tom, we have May 17th in there, which is a week from today. Is that how you want to move forward?
We could do it the 16th. Is that too tight?
It's up to you.
I would say May 16th.
Okay, let's change that to May 16th. Russ, do you have something you'd like to add before I look for a second clarification?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify our timing on things, we're going to have an emergency Marine Fisheries Council meeting probably Tuesday or Wednesday next week to get them to approve it and our commissioner to sign off on it by the end of next week to have it done by the 21st. So we're on a kind of strict timeline too. So, you know, we can play with the 16th or 17th. It doesn't really matter as long as we can have that in hand for our Marine Fisheries Council at 4 o'clock on the 17th. Would be really nice. Thank you.
Bob?
The tricky part on putting a date here is, you know, we've got to find a date that works for the TC, and it's hard to predict their availability, and a week's not much time, but you know, the more time you can give the TC, the better. But I understand the limitations that procedurally that New Jersey has.
Okay, so for now, we have the 16th in there. Given all the clarifications and discussions, I'm going to look for a second to Tom's motion.
The way this is written, New Jersey wants us to approve this tonight and pending the approval of the technical committee. Not the way it's worded right now, it could be pending timely technical committee approval, then we'll move to approve it. I just don't know which one they're actually asking right now.
It's my interpretation that we are approving the measures, and if the technical committee can report back by the 16th that those measures meet the conservation equivalency of option 5, right, Tom? I mean, if the new measures meet the same level of reduction based on technical committee review of the option 5 measures, then we are essentially approving those tonight, and there will be no further action by the board on this issue.
And if the TC finds they don't meet the conservation equivalency, then they're back to out of compliance? Okay, just checking.
Kirby?
So something that I think should be made clear to the board right now in terms of having the TC review this, and Jason maybe can elaborate on it if needed, is that we have a standard methodology for calculating reductions, and what is being proposed here on the board at least are measures, but we don't have a sense on how those measures are derived from either a standard methodology was alluded to and possibly an ad hoc methodology was used. So in trying to task the TC with determining if it meets conservation equivalency, it needs to be more clear if they're supposed to be evaluating it based on standard methodology or to be accepting the methodology that New Jersey is proposing at face value and achieving the reduction. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. I don't know how the technical committee will come to those conclusions. I'll look to Jay or Bob on this one.
I think part of that is a question to New Jersey. Can New Jersey develop or share the methodologies that they use to evaluate percent reduction associated with these measures and the percent reduction in discard mortality associated with their blitz, would you call it, the PR blitz, fishery blitz, whatever it was?
I'm sorry, Bob. I didn't hear all your question, but if Mike would let me, I do want to eliminate the pending timely technical committee approval by May 16th, as far as that process goes. And basically, because what the board did today with sea bass, taking wave 6 and, eliminating that, basically eliminating that fishery, there was no TC review, methodology, approval, or guidance from the TC on that. So based on that, I'm taking out the technical committee review.
And that's fine. This is still your motion without a second, so let's just get it right. I want to make sure everyone's clear. Any more questions regarding just questions on the motion, not comment on the motion at this point, since it's not a completed motion? All right, seeing none, I'm going to ask for it. So Tom has removed the technical committee review, which means that if the board approves this, it happens tonight. No further review, and New Jersey would be approved to implement these measures. And how that plays into tomorrow's discussion regarding compliance would be based on policy board interaction with this decision tonight. So I'm going to look for a second. Rob O'Reilly seconds the motion. Further discussion on the motion. David Pierce.
Yeah, you did a good job, Mr. Chairman, describing the Rhode Island and Massachusetts situation, subject to approval of the New Jersey proposal for 2017. I'm trying to work my way through this motion specific to how Massachusetts proposed measures that were not approved on a conference call should be reconsidered and then approved, because I could make that if this passes, I will make another motion specific to Massachusetts and measures for 2017. I was going to tack it onto this motion, but I don't want to complicate matters for New Jersey. So Rhode Island, I suspect, is not going to be part of that initiative, since they've already said, at least one has said, that their season is already, well, I'll let Rhode Island speak for itself. So I'll make a motion after this one, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine, David. And yeah, Rhode Island's been clear in that they've lost the window of opportunity based on the denial of their request by the board. And so, just so you know, since the board already took an action on the Massachusetts request and it's being reconsidered, we're going to have to go through the reconsidered process. So somebody who voted, so anybody can bring it up. It'll need a 2/3 majority vote in order to pass. While this vote tonight will just need a simple majority. Okay, so we have a motion. We'll take a couple more comments on that motion. David Borden.
Yeah, quick point, Mr. Chairman. From my perspective, I think it should be incumbent upon the state of New Jersey to submit the methodology that they use to do the calculations as part of the proposal, so that it's clear when it goes to the technical committee what isn't that routine?
it's not planning to go to the technical committee. We're looking at making a policy decision tonight to approve this with no further review. That's how the motion's been crafted. The technical committee review was eliminated from consideration. Jim Gilmore?
I can't support the motion because this is way outside the box. If we're going to really look into this, we need to have, in respect to, first off, what New York had gone through the development of option 5, the effort we put in, what Rhode Island and Massachusetts did in terms of their proposals. They submitted formal proposals that were reviewed by the TC and then brought back to the board. This very late, we think this will work proposal is just too loose for me. So I really couldn't support it unless we go back to what I mentioned before, that it be submitted as a formal proposal so we can review it, have the TC review it, and then come back to the board for approval.
Thank you. Tom Foti?
A couple of years ago, we got forced into going into a region with New York and Connecticut. It forced us to raise our size limits so they could bring their size limits down. We've been in that basically situation for a long time now. We had to raise it to 18 inches. We were at 17 inches just because we were in that region. We are now going to raise it to 19 inches. Our fishermen, I'm sure they're not going to be happy when we inform them that they're going to lose 24 days of their season. How many of you around this room would go into your fishermen right now and tell them, we're going to cut off all of September, we're going to cut off all of May that you usually fish on for 24 days and basically be living with just a 104-day season. That's a drastic cut by any means. We've been stuck in this region. We've been abiding by the rules. We haven't pushed the overage. We didn't push when we got the same thing with black sea bass, pushed into a region with Massachusetts. Massachusetts walked in and made a motion years ago. And then we've been stuck with that, where we now basically get forced to go out of, we're not in the southern region where we belong on black sea bass, but that's another story. I'm just asking for relief. For my fishermen at 19 inches, they're just going to be, 18 inches they would discard a lot of fish. At 19 inches, they're going to be discarding. We're killing more summer flounder by discards than we are taking home now. That's not how we basically manage summer flounder. That's how you manage striped bass, because there's a lot of a catch and release fishery along the coast. But that's not what we ever had for summer flounder. We're supposed to have sustainable stocks. I also, Amendment 5 I didn't support in the first place, because when we looked at it, we're living by a benchmark stock assessment for 2013. In that benchmark stock assessment, they say recruitment is not based on spawning stock biomass. So there was no reason for the commercial fishery and the recreational fishery to take a cut in quota on something they know will not make any difference on recruitment, but they did it because of poor recruitment. And that's the catch-22 here. We do measures that really have no purpose but to avoid lawsuits. And that's what I've been watching this for a long time. It's 2000, it was actually 96 when we started getting sued over, when the NIP started getting sued over a bunch of measures they made. So we've been suffering the consequences for years of those decisions, whether it's black sea bass, whether it's scup, or whether it's summer flounder. This has gotten to a point where my fisherman says, we've had enough. We can't live with the party boats are going out of business, tackle stores are going out of business. We're down 2 million trips in New Jersey since 2007. Now, a lot of the other states, New York is down trips, and so is any. In the Mid-Atlantic region, we're down 6 million trips since 2007 to 2014. We're down 50,000 boats in New Jersey from since 2007 to 2014. Yet, our catches go up. Matter of fact, amazingly, when Sandy hit in 2012, which was after the summer flounder season, we looked at the next year, and all of a sudden I get told by MREPs that I caught more fish in May and June in 2013 than I did in 2012. I says, this makes no sense. We have no marinas open. We have no boats in the water. Nobody's fishing except for a few people. Well, and my comment I got from the person on MREP says, well, they were really good fishermen. They must have called the fish that nobody else was fishing for. I said, there wasn't that many fishermen to catch this fish. So there's not a lot of, and we haven't really got relief in them. And you just basically killed us on black sea bass. We are now going to have a season, we do summer flounder, where fishermen stop fishing in September, Labor Day weekend, and they have nothing to fish for until when we open the black sea bass fishery, and now we're going to open it up with 5 fish. I mean, you're killing a $1.1 billion industry in New Jersey for needlessly, whether it's black sea bass or whether it's summer flounder. And that's not what we're here to do. We're here to build sustainable fisheries that we can accommodate both commercial and recreational. And it just doesn't happen in the lately. Hasn't happened on black sea bass, hasn't happened on summer flounder. We're getting a little relief on Scup. But this is the wrong message we send the Congress. And this is going to, as Tony pointed out earlier today, these are going to be the ones that make us revisit the Magnuson-Stevens Act. And people might not be happy what comes out of the next Magnuson-Stevens Act if they keep making moves like this. I'm kind of passionate. I've been sitting here, you notice, quietly all day, not getting involved in a lot of issues, just sitting here listening to going on. And I'm asking you, we need this. We need it for the fishermen in New Jersey. It's not going to hurt the stocks. It's not going to affect recruitment one iota, and that's why we're doing this. And I'm just asking you to be helpful to us. Because the alternatives I don't think you want to see from New Jersey. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. All right, I'm going to go to the audience. I'm going to take one comment. Victor?
My name is Captain Victor Hartley. I own the Ocean City Fishing and Cruising Fleet. One boat that primarily fishes for sea bass that has been tied to the dock this whole entire month because I have nothing to fish for. Another boat that strictly stays in the bay and fishes for flounder. If we have a 19-inch fish, I won't catch a fish all summer. Maybe 1 or 2, maybe I'll put 10 in the boat that I can actually count for. What I want to know, I've been coming to these meetings and I don't think they get me anywhere. Since 2007, 2008, we've went over twice. Since 2009 to 2013, we didn't even go over. Sometimes we didn't. In 2011, we hit 51% of the total quota out of 100. 2014, 105%. 2015, 63%. 2016, we hit 117%. All those years that we did not hit our quota throughout the whole entire eastern seaboard, they don't count for nothing. Now all of a sudden 2016 we have to take a 30% cut. We're not going to carry people for 5 sea bass in November and December. That's going to be a travesty. I don't have striped bass and bluefish down the southern end of the state like they do up north. Now if you make me and my family take this 19-inch fish, like I said, we're not going to catch anything. I run a fuel business. I used to sell 4 million gallons of fuel in the state of New Jersey to boats. Last year, my wife told me we did 1 million gallons of fuel. We lost 3 million gallons over the last 3 or 4 years. I'm in both ends of the industry. So where's the 3 million gallons of fuel that I lost? It ain't going into the boats that I used to sell for. 3 party boats in my area in Ocean City just went out of business. So there's 3 less boats. And like Tom said, but yet we're catching more fish. And now you're going to hit us with this 19-inch fish instead of making a motion tonight, go without the technical committee and just give us this horrible cut to our season. Because now September, I'm going to have nothing to fish for. I can't fish for sea bass. I ain't going to have flounder. It's going to be another month of my boat being tied to the dock. I've already, when people were talking earlier, I've already lost my house over this. And 1 boat. I have 1 boat left because I can't fish and can't pay my bills. I mean, I don't know what you people do sitting here. You're making a salary, but I sure as hell aren't making a living.
All right, thank you, Victor. We're going to go ahead and caucus. Let's take a minute. Tom, it's time to caucus. Go ahead. I didn't see her. I apologize. Nobody raised their hand, so yes, Robin, please, if you can provide us your comments.
Usually you can hear me without. Robin Scott, owner of Ray Scott Stock in Margate, New Jersey. Victor and I are stakeholders here. We're the couple from New Jersey that are. And I implore all of you. I mean, I've met many of you over these meetings, and I simply implore you to use your common sense. I absolutely am abominated by having to cut 24 days out of my season, but I also know that I don't need a technical committee, no disrespect intended. I don't need any kind of quantification of what that does to reducing the flounder catch in New Jersey. Not only will we be under the 2017 proposed limits, we'll be under 2018 also. I already know that. 24 days out of our prime fishing season. I'm 30 miles north of the Delaware Bay. And the Delaware Bay, for the past couple years, we've had a 2-inch fish limit difference from the bay that we share and the flounder size that we share with them. We've been compelled with 18-inch fish while they're taking 16, which is right sized. 4 fish at 16 inches, that's what we have in New Jersey. We have sandy bays and estuaries. The little guys come back from the continental shelf and hit New Jersey and then flow down to Virginia. The big guys go up to New York with the rocky areas and all the cool substrate, things like that. We all know the migration patterns of flounder. I implore you to allow us to stay in the business, reduce the enormous amount of discards, target fewer of the female breeders, and preserve the fishery in New Jersey. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Tom?
Please, Mr. Chairman, I'll be a minute, and you can cut me off. Thank you. I just want to remind this board, back in 2009, when it was going through the process in February, they made a motion and passed a motion that said any states that need to make reductions have to make 50% of those more restrictive measures through a more restrictive season. And since then, it has. I don't think that motion was year specific, I believe, and it's never been followed up. I believe that year there was, by the technical committee, I think there was a performance evaluation to see how measures performed, and I'm sure New Jersey's measures performed actually very well. In 2006, the state of New York had an 18-inch size limit. In 2009, they had a 21-inch size limit. We don't want to end up at a 21-inch size limit. We chose, by state management measures through 2001 to 2013, when our Marine Fisheries Council met and they had to decide, should we go up an inch or should we reduce the season? Sometimes they went up a half an inch. And most times they restricted that season because they did not want to end up with a 21-inch size limit. I don't want to see history repeat itself, because there has been a 21-inch size limit for a couple of years. And that's why we're in regional management. I understand that, but I don't want history to repeat itself. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tom. Robert Riley?
Thank you. Since I did second the motion, I appreciate a brief opportunity here to say why. So, when we started on option 5, one of the things that was said by a board member was, this is an experiment. This is an experiment. Well, apparently 1/3 of the states did not really want that experiment. They wanted something else. And I think we have to recognize that. I would love to have the technical committee review this, but I'm hearing problems on both sides of having that done, both from New Jersey and both from, rightly so, with Bob Beal's comments on the technical committee. So, you know, we didn't know at the time. Option 5 is going to be a good experiment. I didn't want option 5, I wanted option 1, but I'm in a region and option 5 made a lot of sense for good reasons to the region itself, and we all talked about it. So I think we ought to keep that in mind. We also ought to keep in mind that the staff from New Jersey has been working in technical committees themselves for many, many years. I don't think, even though it's a little bit of a situation without a review by the technical committee, that we need to have anything but concern for the timing of everything and where we are today. And that's why I supported the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rob. We're going to go ahead and let's caucus for a minute or two, and we'll come back and call the question. There's still some steam coming out from the other side of the table here, but I'm going to go ahead and read the motion and call the question if everyone's ready. Move to approve today the following measures for New Jersey, the 2017 New Jersey Summer Flounder Recreational Fishery based on conservation equivalency. Shore mode for Island Beach State Park only, 16-inch minimum size limit, 2 fish possession limit, and 104-day open season. Delaware Bay only, west of the Colregs line, 17-inch minimum size limit, 3 fish possession limit, and 104-day open season. All other marine waters, 18-inch minimum size limit, 3 fish possession limit, and 104-day open season. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor of the motion, ask for a roll call vote. Kirby will call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going north to south, we'll start with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
No.
Rhode Island.
No.
Connecticut.
No.
New York.
No.
New Jersey.
Yes.
Delaware.
Yes.
Maryland.
No.
Potomac River Fisheries Commission.
Yes.
Commonwealth of Virginia.
Yes.
North Carolina.
No.
U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
No.
National Marine Fisheries Service.
Abstain.
Okay, the vote was 4 in favor, 7 opposed, with 1 abstention. Motion fails. So that concludes our business under this. David?
And not to delay this, Mr. Chairman, but is the opportunity here to make another motion, make the identical motion subject to the review and approval of the technical committee? Is that appropriate in order?
I'd say it's a different motion. So if you want to make that motion, certainly consider it.
I would like to make a motion, the identical motion, at the end of the motion, add a provision that it is subject to the review and approval of the technical committee.
Would you like to offer a date for that, since the discussion of the date seemed to be...
No, as soon as possible.
So can we modify what's on the board? Does that reflect your concern there? Okay. So we have a motion. It's the same motion, but with technical committee review. John Clark would like to second that motion. Further discussion on the motion. I'm not going to entertain very many points, but because I think we've debated it. But David, maybe you can offer your thoughts, and then I'll go ask for 1 or 2 other comments.
Yeah, I've been sympathetic to New Jersey from the start. Everyone around the table knows it's a difficult situation, but my primary concern, and the reason I voted no before, was we need to adhere to our policies. From my perspective, it's one of the key components of this process. It maintains the integrity of the process, and so I think it's important to get a technical review. I also would add, which follows up on, I think it was Kirby's point earlier, I think that New Jersey should provide specific information as part of this, and I'm not going to include that in the motion, on the methodologies they use, so that they're clear to the technical committee when they do the review. That's normal operating procedure. Thank you.
Okay, any additional? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just clarification, I agree a lot with what Dave just said, and I can read the motion, but would it go to the technical committee first and then come back to the board, or are we voting on it prior to it going to the technical committee? So we approve it and pending what their approval, or which way are we doing it with this motion?
We're approving it pending approval of the technical committee. There would be no further discussion by the board if the technical committee approves the methodologies and the reductions that would come as a form of what's being proposed. Bob?
I think it should be clear on what happens if the technical committee does not endorse, the reduction in these suite of measures being equivalent with the proposal, the original suite. Just so everyone's clear on what happens if it doesn't add up.
If it doesn't add up and it's not supported by the technical committee, then since this motion is subject to that approval, the motion is not approved. That's how I would interpret what's being talked about here. Jay?
Here's my concern from the technical committee. Part of what so I've not seen this proposal. I know nothing about it other than what you've offered today, nor does the rest of the technical committee, except for potentially 2 members. So there's a standard part, easy enough to review and do the math. Then there's a part that I don't understand, and so if there's not something that is quantifiable in that part of it, we're going to have difficulty. And I guess I'm hesitating a little bit, but this basically puts a board decision now back on the technical committee, which I don't think is proper. I think if we give some recommendations, some advice, it absolutely should come back to the board, because it does not seem right to put that type of decision on a technical committee.
Thanks for offering that, Jay. Adam? I'll come to you, Jim, after Adam.
So I agree with Jay entirely, and when we got to this point of the motion, the first question we had in discussing is, what are we asking the TC to approve it relative to? So I think this motion can be perfected by referencing the 19-inch 3-fish 128-day season, and by saying we're looking for the approval of what we put forward as being at least or more conservative than that proposal. And we're very confident that at the very least, the standard methodologies included therein, if you choose to evaluate it only on those merits, will demonstrate it's at least and more conservative than the 19-inch 3-fish 128-day season. And whether that just stays on the record here is useful information to the TC, or whether you need the motion changed, that would be my recommended path forward.
And that's been mentioned a couple times already, that essentially a comparison between the option 5 regulations as they would have been in place in New Jersey versus the option that you're presenting here today would be the comparison of the two. And if they're equivalent, or more conservative, that would force the agreement or approval by the technical committee. David Pierce.
Yeah, I completely agree with Jason. I think it's inappropriate to have the technical committee make the call, so I would move to amend the motion to scratch out as soon as possible and put in its place, followed by board consideration and decision.
Okay, so we have an amended motion to remove as soon as possible and replace with followed by board consideration and decision. Do I have a second on that? Bob Ballou seconds that. David?
In the interest of time, I'll accept that as a perfection if John Clark will.
John?
Sure, I'm just confused. Is this like a double board approval then? So we have to approve it now, goes to the TC, then it comes back and we approve it again?
We're going to approve it. It's going to go to the TC. We're basically approving it to go to the TC. The process is the one where the board has to take two actions. The board is either going to not even send it to the TC, or we're going to send it to the TC and revisit it through a follow-up, and it's going to have to be some form of a webinar.
Sure. That's cool.
All right, that's cool. I'll take that as an okay. So let me just see here. This is subject to review and approval by the technical committee and subsequent board consideration and approval. I think that's fine. Bob, does that sound okay to you? Okay. Any further discussion on this? Do you need a minute to caucus? Anyone need a caucus time? Okay, we'll give 30 seconds to caucus. Okay. All right, I'm not going to read this full motion back into the record, but I will just make the point that I just made, that by approving this motion, we're approving this to go, this methodology and accompanied by the regulations that are in front of us would go to the technical committee. Technical committee will review those in comparison to option 5, and the board would have another shot at approving that after technical committee review. In sidebar, while you were caucusing, we have no idea the timeline of how this might happen, and that's something that we're just going to have to do the best we can. You know, so I can't commit in any way as your chairman on when this action will be taken, but we'll have to start the process of scheduling meetings, webinars, materials. That's just part of this, what this option is. Okay, so for all those in favor of the motion in front of you, please indicate by raising your hand. It's 11 in favor. All those opposed? It's 1 opposed. Null votes. Abstentions? So 0-0. Motion carries. Are there any other agenda items regarding whatever we're talking about here? State compliance to come before us before we move on to our final agenda item? Okay, seeing none, and we are very late, Bob. I know you and I have had this conversation, and we talked about what might happen in the event that the sun starts to come up before we leave. And so I will turn to you. Bob wants to offer a few thoughts regarding the white paper, and I think what we ultimately will do as a result of Bob's presentation, which I know will be brief, is just it's looking for a path forward. And that's what we kind of need to agree on as a board as to what Bob's going to present. So, Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have about a 3-hour presentation, but I think I can cut it down and make it a little less than that. Seriously, I did develop some prepared remarks because I knew it would be late. I knew our cerebral capacity would be severely compromised. So with your indulgence, with the board's indulgence, 5 minutes to just read some remarks into the record. I think it would be easier to do it this way, and then I assure you that would be all I think we need to do on this item. So the impetus for the white paper is set forth in the introduction section of the document, and I'll begin by reading from that, paraphrasing just a bit. Achieving the necessary harvest reductions in 2017 via the process undertaken to develop Addendum 28, dramatic pause, was not easy. The addendum noted that the management program for 2017 will have shortcomings with regard to addressing the issues and challenges associated with managing the recreational fluke fishery, and is thus intended to be an interim program while focusing on the development of a more comprehensive solution for the future. Moving forward, the board should reconsider the framework that has allowed regional management under conservation equivalency in recent years and develop an approach that is more workable. The paper then lays out in glorious detail the background for the current management program and the annual specification process. It then highlights challenges and questions for the board to consider moving forward. The paper concludes with a section titled Moving Forward. I agreed to contribute to the writing of that section and did so in a rather cursory way given time constraints. So I just want to offer a very brief and slightly revised take on that section. First, it seems abundantly apparent to me, and I think just as apparent for everyone else in this room, that we lack a clear vision for what we want the recreational fluke fishery to look like. What is it that we want to achieve? So step one in the process of moving forward needs to be some sort of visioning exercise. That exercise, dramatic pause, won't be easy. We have diverse perspectives, but we have to try and get on the same page in terms of our ultimate goal before we roll up our sleeves and start working towards it. Second, we need to chart a course to realize our vision. That course, as I see it, has both a short-term and a long-term track. The short-term track involves that which can be done via the annual specification process. We already have the mechanisms in place to assess a range of options tailored to move us forward in accordance with our vision under the conservation equivalency framework. It's what we have done since 2001, and it's what we have done every year since 2014 via annual addenda. It's what we're going to have to do again this year to establish our management program for next year. The key difference this year, which relates directly to this agenda item at this meeting, is that we should start the process earlier. Instead of waiting until our fall commission meeting and December joint meeting to start figuring out the types of options we want to consider for our next addendum, the suggestion being offered today via this white paper is to essentially begin now and allow the process to evolve and develop over the next 8 months so that by the time we reach November or December, we have something that's well vetted and ready for public comment. The hope and expectation is that we'll be well positioned, or at least better positioned, for final decision making in February, if not sooner. So, as set forth in the white paper, the key process-related recommendation being offered today to the board is to task the board's recreational work group, or working group, with the development of some preliminary management options to be brought back before the board for review and consideration at our next meeting in August. As noted earlier, those options should ideally flow from a visioning exercise. I leave open the question of how that visioning should be undertaken. One thought is to simply solicit input from the board through Kirby, and that input could be taken up by the working group, massaged and reported out as part of our homework assignment, or maybe it makes more sense to workshop the process. Again, I leave that piece open for discussion. Lastly, I'll just speak very briefly to the second longer-term track that I referenced earlier. As we have learned via presentations given at past meetings by Kiley and Kirby, there is a set of recreational fisheries issues that cannot be addressed solely by the Commission via the conservation equivalency framework. If they are to be considered, they require broader action, likely joint action via an amendment or perhaps a new framework addendum combo. And then I've got a bunch of issues here that would fall under that category. They've already been provided in past meetings by Kiley. It includes such things as a new F-based approach to managing the rec fishery, sector separation, etc. As we know, the Council has decided to delay addressing recreational issues under the comp amendment process based largely on the still pending updates to the MRIV data, which is likely to have a significant impact on the analysis of issues and options. I suggest it would behoove the Board, with the support of its REC working group and in coordination with the Council, to identify and stay focused on all management reforms needed to realize our vision for the fishery, working through the CE process as our short-term strategy and teeing up those complementary longer-term issues requiring additional additional action by the board and/or council for consideration as soon as possible, ideally by next year, although it's understood that the overall amendment process could take 2 or 3 years to fully complete. The key is to move forward incrementally with visioning and short-term actions that map into our long game. With that, Mr. Chairman, and to everyone on the board, I thank you for your time, particularly at this late hour, and this opportunity to sort of strategize a bit, and look forward to hearing other thoughts and perspectives, although maybe that's best done at a later time. But that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, for that. And I think your path, your short-term path forward, I think is something we can certainly do, and provide time for a discussion more so at the August meeting when we convene again. But the recreational group that we've had, who's worked on issues, I think could meet sometime this summer. Does anybody have is anybody opposed to following back up on this in August? This is a short term, David.
Not opposed, but it seems to me that the Mid-Atlantic Council, with your leadership, Chris, that you've done a lot of work on this issue already, visioning regarding the recreational fishery. I don't recall where that ended up, but I think you did a lot of legwork on this already, and we can benefit from all that work that you and the council did.
So we did go through a visioning exercise about, how many years, 3 years ago? Yeah, 4 years ago. That visioning project worked well. Bob was involved with that. That visioning project turned into a strategic plan, and that strategic plan drives the implementation plan that we use every year. So some of the ideas that Bob has brought up are captured in that visioning document. I do think it's a good idea, though, to revisit those and have a very specific sort of discussion with a larger group, including stakeholders, to exactly what we're trying to do with the recreational fishery. I think that's a great idea. Some of the things that you mentioned in your white paper, I've read it real quick, but we put an F-based, we just put an RFP out for someone to do some of the work that you talked about, including this F-based strategy for the recreational fishery. We also have some ongoing work relative to looking at slot limits. You guys have heard Dr. Sullivan talk about it. We have another guy that's actually working on some of that as well. So I think all that could coalesce into some really good ideas and some actions that could help, hopefully, in 2018.
All right, thanks for that, Chris. Any other thoughts, Adam?
I just want to add, Mr. Chairman, that it's been a very long day. Despite feeling like I'm on the Oregon Trail with a broken down wagon, no food, no water, no bullets. That's what the recreational management process feels like at this point. But that being said, I think everyone that stayed here gave this their full attention tonight. I extend a word of thanks, and I feel like there's at least people working together on the issue. And despite the fact that my kids and I still haven't won that Oregon Trail card game, I will have faith that we can find a way to make it to the end here. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Adam. All right, and thank you, Bob. Let's talk offline after the meeting about thoughts for moving forward, and we'll loop Chris and Bob in as well. Okay, that takes us to other business, and I'm sorry to report, Emerson, but I think we've run out of time. If you want to make a comment, maybe just to put it back on the record as to what your expectations might be for a future discussion, now would be the time, but we're not going to have time to discuss it.
I agree. Considering the late hour, we can postpone this discussion to the next board meeting. I just want to get a conversation started again about RSA.
We can do that. Okay, is there any other new business or other items to come before the board? Motion to adjourn a 7 hour and 43-minute board meeting? All right.
It's not a record. We're not going for records.
I call the meeting adjourned. Have fun tomorrow.